The rain stung Jasper Kane's face like 1,000 tiny accusations, each drop a reminder of the town that had turned its back on him. He stood outside the Greyhound station in Coldwater, Ohio, clutching a duffel bag that held everything he owned. Everything except his dignity, which they tried to strip away. At 23, Jasper had never imagined his life would unravel so fast, all because he dared to love who he loved. 2 weeks ago, he'd been arrested. The cops had stormed into his tiny apartment above the hardware store, their boots heavy with purpose, and pinned him to the floor as they waved a bag of pills in his face. Pills he'd never seen before. "You're done, Kane?" Officer Hargrove had sneered, his breath sour with coffee and contempt. "We don't need your kind dealing drugs in our town." Jasper's protests were drowned out by the snap of handcuffs, the cold metal biting into his wrists as they dragged him out. He knew why this was happening. It wasn't just the drugs. It was because he'd been seen kissing Milo Rivera outside the diner last summer, under the flickering neon sign that buzzed like a warning. Coldwater wasn't a place for people like Jasper. The town was a patchwork of cornfields and churches, where tradition was law and difference was a crime. He'd grown up here, raised by his grandfather Elias Kane, in a creaky farmhouse on the edge of town. Elias had been the only one who ever understood him, the only one who didn't flinch when Jasper came out at 17. "Love who you love, boy," Elias had said, his voice rough but warm, like gravel smoothed by a river. "Just don't let this town chew you up." But Elias was gone now, taken by a heart attack 6 months ago, leaving Jasper alone to face a world that seemed determined to break him. The bus pulled up, its brakes hissing like a tired sigh. Jasper boarded, his heart pounding as he scanned the empty seats. He wasn't running away, not exactly. He was running toward something, answers. The arrest had been a setup, he was sure of it. The pills, the raid, the way Hargrove's eyes gleamed with something more than duty. It all pointed to a truth Jasper couldn't yet grasp. And then there was the letter he'd found last night, tucked inside Elias's old Bible, the one Jasper had taken from the farmhouse before the bank seized it. The letter was in his grandfather's shaky handwriting, addressed to Jasper, with a single line that burned into his mind. "If they come for you, find my will. It's the key." Jasper sank into a seat by the window, the glass cool against his forehead. The will. Elias had never mentioned one, not in all their years together. Jasper had assumed the old man's estate was as simple as the life he'd lived. A few acres, a rusty tractor, a house full of memories. But the letter suggested something else, something hidden. Something that could unravel the lies that had landed Jasper in a jail cell, facing charges that could steal his future. The bus lurched forward, carrying him toward Columbus, where Elias's lawyer, Miriam Tate, kept an office. Jasper didn't know what he'd find there, but he knew he couldn't stay in Coldwater. Not when the town had already convicted him in their minds, not for drugs but for being gay. The whispers had started long before the arrest, in the pews of St. Mark's Church, in the aisles of the grocery store, in the way people crossed the street when they saw him with Milo. Milo, with his easy smile and dark eyes, who'd left town months ago, unable to bear the weight of Coldwater's judgment. Jasper didn't blame him, but he wasn't Milo. He wasn't running. As the bus rolled through the darkened countryside, Jasper's thoughts drifted to the night of the arrest. He'd been alone, sketching in his notebook, designs for furniture he dreamed of building one day. The door had burst open, and Hargrove's voice had cut through the silence like a blade. "We got a tip, Kane. You're dealing." "A tip? From who?" Jasper had no enemies, not really. He kept to himself, worked shifts at the lumberyard, and avoided trouble. But someone had wanted him gone, someone with enough pull to make the police move. Hargrove wasn't acting alone. Jasper could feel it. There was a bigger hand at play, one that had orchestrated his downfall with precision. He pulled the letter from his pocket, unfolding it carefully. The paper was brittle, the ink smudged in places, but Elias's words were clear. "Find my will. It's the key." What did that mean? Elias had been a farmer, not a man of secrets. Yet the letter hinted at something more. A truth buried deep, waiting to be unearthed. Jasper's fingers tightened around the paper. He didn't know what he was walking into, but he knew one thing. He wasn't going to let them win. Not Hargrove, not the town, not whoever had planted those drugs to silence him. The bus slowed as it approached Columbus, the city lights smearing across the window like a promise. Jasper's heart raced. He was out of Coldwater, but he wasn't free. Not yet. The will was his only lead, and Miriam Tate was his only hope. He thought of Elias, of the way his grandfather's hands had trembled as he'd carved a wooden bird for Jasper's 10th birthday, each stroke of the knife deliberate and sure. "You're stronger than you know," Elias had said. Jasper clung to those words now, a lifeline in the dark. He stepped off the bus into the damp night air, the city alive with noise and possibility. Somewhere in Columbus, the truth was waiting, and Jasper Kane was going to find it. Miriam Tate's office was a cramped, third-floor walk-up in a part of Columbus that hadn't seen a renovation since the 80s. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, casting a sterile glow over stacks of legal files and a wilting fern in the corner. Jasper sat across from Miriam, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, as she slid a manila folder across her desk. "This is it," she said, her voice low, as if the walls might be listening. "Your grandfather's will. But I'm warning you, Jasper. It's not what you expect." Jasper's hands shook as he opened the folder. The document was short, only a few pages, but the words hit him like a punch. Elias hadn't just left him the farmhouse or the land. He'd left Jasper a controlling share in Kane Agricorp, a company Jasper had never heard of. "This doesn't make sense," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Grandpa was a farmer. He didn't own a corporation." Miriam leaned back, her chair creaking. Elias was more than he let on. 30 years ago, he started a small agricultural supply business with a partner, Victor Hargrove. Yes, that Hargrove, Officer Hargrove's father. It grew into Kane Agricorp, a major player in the Midwest. Elias sold his public shares years ago but kept a silent majority stake. When he died, that stake passed to you. Jasper's mind reeled. Victor Hargrove. The name was a ghost from his childhood. A man who'd once been Elias's friend but had drifted away after some unspoken falling out. Now his son, Officer Daniel Hargrove, was the one who'd arrested Jasper, who'd smirked as he tightened the cuffs. The pieces were starting to fit, but the picture they formed was uglier than Jasper had imagined. "Why didn't he tell me?" Jasper asked, his voice cracking. "Why keep this a secret?" Miriam's eyes softened. "Elias wanted to protect you. He knew the Hargroves, Victor and his cronies, had clout in Coldwater. They've been milking Kane Agricorp for years, skimming profits, cutting corners. Elias suspected they were into something dirtier, but he couldn't prove it. He wrote that letter to you because he knew they'd come after you once you inherited." Jasper's stomach twisted. The drugs, the arrest. It wasn't just about him being gay, it was about money, power, and a legacy Elias had hidden to keep him safe. But safe from what? Or who? He thought of Daniel Hargrove's cold stare, the way the other officers had deferred to him during the raid. Hargrove wasn't just a small-town cop. He was part of something bigger, something that wanted Jasper out of the way. There's more, Miriam said, sliding another document across the desk. It was a handwritten note from Elias, attached to the will. Jasper, if you're reading this, they've come for you. The will is your shield, but you need to find the ledger. It's in the farmhouse, hidden where we used to play checkers. It'll show you what they've done. Jasper's breath caught. The checkers table, an old oak piece Elias had built himself, with a secret compartment Jasper had found as a kid. He'd thought it was just a game, a place to hide marbles or candy. Now it was something else entirely. I need to go back, Jasper said, standing abruptly. To Coldwater. To the farmhouse. Miriam grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong. You can't just walk in there. The Hargroves know you're out on bail. They'll be watching. And if they're as dirty as Elias thought, they won't hesitate to hurt you. Jasper's jaw tightened. They already have. He left Miriam's office with the will tucked into his jacket, his mind racing. The farmhouse had been foreclosed on, but Jasper still had a key. If he could get in, find the ledger, he might have proof, not just to clear his name, but to expose the Hargroves and whoever else was pulling the strings. The bus ride back to Coldwater felt endless, each mile heavy with the weight of what he was about to do. When he arrived, the town was quiet, the streets slick with rain. The farmhouse loomed at the edge of town, its windows dark, the for sale sign crooked in the yard. Jasper slipped through the back door, his heart pounding as he navigated the familiar creaks of the floorboards. The checkers table sat in the living room, covered in dust. He knelt, his fingers tracing the underside until he felt the catch. A small lever that released the compartment. Inside was a leather-bound ledger, its pages filled with Elias's meticulous handwriting. Dates, numbers, names. Victor Hargrove's name appeared over and over, tied to payments that didn't add up, shipments that never reached their destinations. Jasper's pulse quickened as he read. This was it, proof of embezzlement, maybe worse. But as he closed the ledger, a shadow moved in the doorway. He froze, his breath catching as a voice cut through the silence. You shouldn't have come back, Kane. It was Daniel Hargrove, his badge glinting in the moonlight, a gun in his hand. Jasper's heart slammed against his ribs as he clutched the ledger, its weight suddenly heavier than the world itself. Daniel Hargrove stood in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the pale moonlight spilling through the farmhouse's broken windows. The gun in his hand was steady, but his eyes flickered with something Jasper hadn't expected, fear. Put it down, Kane, Hargrove said, his voice low and tight. You don't know what you're messing with. Jasper's mouth was dry, but he forced himself to speak. I know enough. This ledger, it's got your father's name all over it. Embezzlement, shady deals. You framed me to keep me quiet, didn't you? Because I inherited the company you've been bleeding dry. Hargrove's lips curled into a sneer, but it didn't reach his eyes. You think you're smart, don't you? Just like your old man. Elias thought he could play hero too. Look where that got him. The words hit Jasper like a slap. What did you do to him? He demanded, his voice shaking with rage. Elias's heart attack had seemed sudden, but now doubt gnawed at Jasper's gut. Had it been natural? Or had the Hargroves ensured Elias's silence, just as they were trying to silence Jasper now? Hargrove took a step forward, the floorboards groaning under his weight. You're in over your head, kid. Give me the ledger, and maybe you walk out of here. Jasper's mind raced. He was cornered, unarmed, and alone. But he wasn't helpless. He'd spent his life in this house, knew every inch of it. The back door was 20 feet away, through the kitchen. If he could distract Hargrove, he might make it. His eyes darted to the checkers table, then back to the cop. You're scared, Jasper said, forcing a steadiness he didn't feel. You know this ledger will ruin you. Your whole family. Hargrove's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Jasper thought he'd pull the trigger. But then a noise, a sharp crack from outside, made them both freeze. Headlights swept across the windows, and the sound of gravel crunching under tires filled the air. Someone was here. Hargrove cursed under his breath, glancing toward the window, and Jasper seized his chance. He bolted, clutching the ledger as he sprinted for the kitchen. Hargrove shouted, his boots pounding after him, but Jasper was faster. He shoved through the back door, the cool night air hitting his face as he ran toward the cornfield behind the house. The stalks swallowed him, their dry leaves rustling as he pushed deeper, his breath ragged. He didn't stop until he was sure Hargrove wasn't following. Crouched low, Jasper opened the ledger again, his phone's flashlight casting a dim glow over the pages. The numbers were staggering, millions siphoned from Kane Agricorp over decades, funneled through shell companies. Victor Hargrove's name was everywhere, but so were others. Local officials, a state senator, even the sheriff. This wasn't just a family scheme. It was a network, a web of corruption that had thrived in Coldwater's shadows. And Jasper, with his inheritance, was a threat to it all. His phone buzzed, startling him. A text from an unknown number. Meet me at the old mill. Midnight. Come alone. Jasper's stomach dropped. The mill was a derelict structure on the edge of town, abandoned since the 90s. It was a place kids dared each other to explore, a place where secrets could hide. He didn't know who'd sent the message, but he had a guess, Milo. No one else would know to contact him now when he was on the run, the ledger burning a hole in his hands. Jasper checked the time, 11:15. He had to move. The cornfield gave way to a dirt road, and he kept to the shadows, his heart pounding with every snap of a twig. When he reached the mill, its sagging roof and broken windows loomed like a ghost against the night sky. He slipped inside, the air thick with dust and the faint smell of rust. Jasper! The voice was soft, familiar, and it sent a jolt through him. Milo Rivera stepped out from behind a rusted machine, his dark eyes wide with worry. He looked different, thinner, his hair longer, but it was him. Jasper's heart ached at the sight, memories of their summer together flooding back. "What are you doing here?" Jasper whispered, stepping closer. "You left. You said you couldn't stay." Milo's face crumpled. "I didn't want to leave you, but they threatened me, Jasper. Hargrove's men. They said if I stayed, they'd make sure we both went down. I thought leaving would protect you." His voice broke. "I was wrong." Jasper wanted to be angry, but all he felt was relief. Milo was here now when he needed him most. "They framed me," Jasper said, holding up the ledger. "This is why. My grandfather's company, they've been stealing from it for years. And now they want me gone because I own it." Milo's eyes widened as he scanned the pages. "This is bigger than Coldwater," he said. "We need to get this to someone who can do something about it. A journalist, maybe. Someone outside their reach." Before Jasper could respond, a beam of light cut through the mill's broken windows. Voices echoed outside, Hargrove's men, closing in. Jasper grabbed Milo's hand, the ledger tucked under his arm. "We need to move," he said. "Now." Jasper and Milo slipped through a gap in the mill's rotting wall, the night air sharp against their skin as they ran. The ledger was a heavy weight under Jasper's arm, its pages a ticking bomb that could either save him or bury him deeper. Hargrove's men were close. Flashlights swept the darkness, their voices barking orders as they fanned out across the abandoned lot. Jasper's pulse thundered in his ears, but Milo's hand in his was steady, grounding him. They ducked into a drainage ditch, the damp earth soaking through Jasper's jeans as they crouched low. "We can't keep running blind," Milo whispered, his breath warm against Jasper's cheek. "We need a plan." Jasper nodded, his mind racing. The ledger was proof, but it was useless if they couldn't get it to someone who'd listen. Miriam Tate was too exposed. She'd already warned Jasper about the Hargroves' reach. But there was one person who might help. Lena Carter, a reporter for the Columbus Dispatch who'd written exposés on local corruption. Jasper had read her work, admired her fearlessness. If anyone could take on the Hargroves, it was her. "We need to get to Columbus," Jasper said, his voice low. "Lena Carter. She's our shot." Milo's eyes searched his, a flicker of doubt giving way to resolve. "Okay, but we can't take the roads. They'll be watching." Jasper thought of the old railway tracks that ran parallel to the highway, abandoned but still passable. "The tracks," he said. "They'll take us most of the way. We just need to stay out of sight." They moved quickly, keeping to the shadows as they made their way to the tracks. The night was alive with sounds. Crickets, distant sirens, the crunch of their shoes on gravel. Jasper's mind churned with questions. Why had Milo come back? And how had he known where to find him? But there was no time to ask, not with Hargrove's men closing in. The tracks stretched into the darkness, a silver thread leading them away from Coldwater. They walked for hours, the ledger a constant reminder of the stakes. Milo broke the silence first. "I never stopped thinking about you," he said, his voice soft but clear. "When I left, I thought I was doing the right thing. But I was a coward." Jasper's chest tightened. He wanted to tell Milo it was okay, that he understood, but the hurt was still there, sharp and raw. "You could have told me," he said instead. "I thought you didn't care." Milo stopped, turning to face him. "I cared too much. That's why I left. Hargrove's men, they showed me pictures of us, Jasper, from that night at the diner. They said they'd ruin you if I stayed. I thought I was protecting you." Jasper's throat burned. He wanted to pull Milo close, to erase the months of distance between them, but the sound of an engine in the distance snapped him back to reality. They ducked behind a rusted rail car, holding their breath as a patrol car crept along a nearby road, its spotlight slicing through the night. When it passed, Jasper let out a shaky breath. "We need to keep moving." By dawn, they'd reached the outskirts of Columbus, exhausted but alive. Lena Carter's office was in a sleek downtown building, a world away from Coldwater's crumbling streets. Jasper's nerves jangled as they approached, the ledger tucked inside his jacket. What if Lena didn't believe him? What if she was part of the Hargroves network? Inside, Lena was younger than Jasper had expected, mid-30s, with sharp green eyes and a desk buried under notes and coffee cups. She listened as Jasper explained, her expression unreadable. When he handed her the ledger, she flipped through it, her brows furrowing. "This is explosive," she said finally. "But it's not enough. We need more than numbers. We need a witness, someone who can tie this to the Hargroves directly." Jasper's heart sank. "I don't have anyone else. Just this." Lena leaned forward, her voice low. "Then we need to draw them out. Make them think you've got more than you do. If they're desperate, they'll slip up." Milo spoke up, his voice steady. "What if we leak that Jasper's meeting someone with more evidence? Set a trap?" Lena's eyes lit up. "Risky, but it could work. I've got contacts who can spread the word discreetly. But you two need to lay low. If the Hargroves catch wind of this, they won't just come for the ledger. They'll come for you." Jasper nodded, his resolve hardening. He'd been running for too long. It was time to fight back. Lena agreed to arrange a meeting at a public place. A park in Columbus, neutral ground. She'd make sure the rumor reached the right ears. Jasper Kane had evidence that could bring down Kane AgriCorp's corrupt network. As they left Lena's office, Milo grabbed Jasper's hand, squeezing it tightly. "We're in this together now," he said. "No more running." Jasper looked into Milo's eyes, seeing the boy he'd loved and the man who'd come back for him. "No more running," he agreed. The park was alive with the hum of early evening. Families on blankets, joggers weaving through paths, the distant laughter of kids chasing a frisbee. Jasper and Milo sat on a bench near the lake, the ledger hidden in a backpack at their feet. Lena had chosen this spot for its visibility. Open, public, impossible for Hargrove's men to make a move without being seen. But Jasper's nerves were electric, his eyes scanning every face in the crowd. The trap was set, but traps could backfire. Lena had spread the rumor through her network. Jasper Kane was meeting a whistleblower with damning evidence against Kane AgriCorp. She'd been vague enough to spark curiosity, specific enough to draw the Hargroves out. "They'll send someone," she'd said. "Maybe not Daniel himself, but someone close. Watch for anyone who lingers too long." Milo's knee bounced beside Jasper, a nervous tick Jasper hadn't seen since their summer together. "You okay?" Jasper asked, his voice low. Milo managed a tight smile. "Just wish we were meeting for coffee instead of playing bait." Jasper's lips twitched, the ghost of a laugh. "Next time," he said, and the promise hung between them, fragile but real. A man in a gray hoodie sat on a bench across the lake, his face obscured by a baseball cap. He'd been there too long, his posture too stiff to be casual. Jasper's stomach tightened. "That's him," he whispered, nudging Milo. "Don't look directly." Milo nodded, his hand brushing Jasper's under the bench. A small gesture, but it steadied him. They waited, the minutes stretching into eternity, until the man in the hoodie stood and started walking toward them. Jasper's pulse spiked, but before he could react, another figure approached from the opposite direction. A woman, mid-40s, with a sharp jaw and a briefcase. She didn't look like one of Hargrove's thugs. She looked like someone with a purpose. "Jasper Kane?" she asked, stopping in front of them. Her voice was crisp, professional. "I'm Claire Dutton. I worked for your grandfather." Jasper blinked, caught off guard. "You're the whistleblower?" Claire's eyes darted to the man in the hoodie, who'd paused mid-step, watching. "Not exactly," she said, lowering her voice. "But I know what's in that ledger. I was Elias's accountant for 10 years. He told me to find you if anything happened to him." Milo leaned forward. "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" Claire's face tightened. "Because I was scared. The Hargroves have people everywhere. Cops, judges, even in Columbus. But when I heard you had the ledger, I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore." Before Jasper could respond, the man in the hoodie started moving again. Faster now, his hand slipping into his pocket. Jasper's heart lurched. "We need to go," he said, grabbing the backpack. But Claire was quicker. She stepped in front of them, raising her voice just enough to draw attention from nearby parkgoers. "Hey!" she called, pointing at the man. "Why are you following us?" Heads turned. The man froze, his hand still in his pocket, then turned and bolted toward the parking lot. Jasper's breath caught. Claire's move had bought them time, but they weren't safe yet. "Come with us," he told her, already moving toward the park's exit. Milo and Claire followed, the three of them weaving through the crowd as the sun dipped below the horizon. They reached Lena's office just as night fell, the city lights casting long shadows across the street. Inside, Lena was waiting, her desk now cluttered with printouts of emails and financial records Claire had brought. "This is gold," Lena said, scanning the documents. Claire's got names, dates, even recordings of meetings where Victor Hargrove discussed the shell companies. Combined with the ledger, it's enough to go public. Jasper felt a flicker of hope, but it was tempered by fear. "They'll come after us," he said. "All of us." Lena nodded, her expression grim. "That's why we move fast. I'm publishing tomorrow morning. Front page. The Hargroves won't have time to cover their tracks." Claire spoke up, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "There's one more thing. Elias didn't just leave you the company, Jasper. He left you a letter, sealed, with instructions to give it to you if you ever found the ledger. It's in my safe deposit box." Jasper's chest tightened. Another letter. Another piece of Elias's puzzle. "I need to see it," he said. They agreed to retrieve the letter first thing in the morning, but as they left Lena's office, Jasper couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The street was too quiet, the shadows too deep. He grabbed Milo's hand, holding it tightly as they walked to a nearby motel, Claire trailing behind. They were so close to the truth, but every step felt like a gamble. In the motel room, Jasper sat on the edge of the bed, the ledger beside him. Milo sat next to him, their shoulders brushing. "We're going to make it through this," Milo said, his voice soft but certain. "Together." Jasper looked at him, the weight of the past year falling away for a moment. "Together," he echoed, and for the first time in months he believed it. The motel room was a cocoon of dim light and stale air, the hum of the air conditioner the only sound as Jasper stared at the ceiling. Milo slept beside him, his breathing steady, but Jasper couldn't rest. The ledger sat on the nightstand, its pages a map of betrayal that stretched back decades. Tomorrow, Lena would publish her story, and Claire would hand over Elias's final letter. But tonight, Jasper felt the weight of every choice that had led him here. He thought of Elias, of the man who taught him to carve wood, to stand tall, to love without shame. Elias had known the Hargroves were dangerous, had hidden the truth to protect Jasper. But he'd also left Jasper the tools to fight back, the will, the ledger, and now this mysterious letter. Jasper's fingers itched to open it, to know what final words his grandfather had left him. Was it an apology, a warning, or something else entirely? At dawn, they met Claire at a bank downtown, her face pale but resolute as she unlocked the safe deposit box. The letter was simple, sealed in a plain envelope with Jasper's name in Elias's familiar scrawl. Jasper's hands trembled as he opened it, Milo and Claire standing silently beside him. The words were few, but they hit like a tidal wave. "Jasper, you're my legacy, not the company. The Hargroves took everything from me. My trust, my peace, but they can't take your strength. The ledger will expose them, but the truth about my death will break them. I didn't die of a heart attack. Check the coroner's report. I love you always." Jasper's vision blurred, the letter shaking in his hands. "He was murdered," he whispered, the words barely audible. Milo's arm went around him, steadying him as the room spun. Claire's face crumpled, her guilt evident. She'd known Elias suspected foul play but hadn't acted. "We need to get this to Lena," Milo said, his voice firm. "The coroner's report, the ledger, all of it. They can't hide from this." Claire nodded, wiping her eyes. "I know someone in the coroner's office. A friend. She can pull the report discreetly." They moved quickly, driven by a shared urgency. Lena was waiting at her office, her laptop open, the story already half written. When Jasper handed her the letter, her eyes widened. "This changes everything," she said. If we can prove Elias was murdered, it's not just fraud, it's a conspiracy. The coroner's report was damning. Claire's friend delivered it within hours, and it showed traces of a rare drug in Elias's system, one that could induce a heart attack without leaving obvious signs. The report had been buried, the official cause of death listed as natural. But the truth was there in black and white, and it pointed straight to the Hargroves. Lena worked through the night, weaving the ledger, the letter, and the coroner's report into a story that would shake Coldwater to its core. Jasper and Milo stayed with her, proofing drafts, while Claire made calls to her contacts, ensuring the story would reach beyond Columbus to national outlets. The Hargroves' network was vast, but the truth was sharper, and it was coming for them. By morning, the story was live. Jasper's phone buzzed with alerts as the Columbus Dispatch's headline screamed across the internet, "Small-town corruption exposed. Kane Agricorp embezzlement and murder." Lena's article detailed the ledger's evidence, Elias's letter, and the coroner's report, naming Victor and Daniel Hargrove as key figures in a decades-long scheme. It mentioned Jasper's arrest, framing it as a desperate attempt to silence him after he inherited the company. The fallout was immediate. Social media erupted, with Coldwater residents posting in shock, some defending the Hargroves, others demanding justice. Jasper's name trended, his face plastered across news sites alongside Elias's. He felt exposed, raw, but also powerful. The truth was out, and it was his grandfather's final gift. But the Hargroves weren't done. As Jasper, Milo, and Claire left Lena's office, a black SUV pulled up, blocking their path. Daniel Hargrove stepped out, his face a mask of rage. "You think you've won?" he spat. "You have no idea what you've started." Jasper stood his ground, the ledger in his backpack, Elias's letter in his pocket. "It's over, Hargrove. The world knows what you did." Hargrove's eyes narrowed, but before he could respond, sirens wailed in the distance. Lena had tipped off the state police, and they were closing in. Hargrove hesitated, then bolted, disappearing into an alley as the sirens grew louder. Jasper's knees buckled, and Milo caught him, holding him tight. "It's not over yet," Milo said. "But we're closer." Claire nodded, her voice steady. "We need to get you somewhere safe. Both of you." As they walked away, Jasper felt the weight of Elias's letter in his pocket, a reminder of the man who'd believed in him. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time, Jasper felt like he was winning. The safe house was a small apartment on the edge of Columbus, arranged by Lena's contacts at the Dispatch. It was sparse. A sagging couch, a kitchen table with mismatched chairs, but it was a sanctuary. Jasper sat at the table, the ledger open in front of him, its pages a testament to the greed that had torn his life apart. Milo was in the kitchen, brewing coffee, while Claire paced, her phone pressed to her ear as she coordinated with Lena's team. The story had gone viral, and the Hargroves' empire was crumbling, but Jasper knew better than to think it was over. The state police had raided Kane Agricorp's offices that morning, seizing records and arresting Victor Hargrove. Daniel was still at large, a ghost in the wind, and that scared Jasper more than he wanted to admit. He'd seen the look in Daniel's eyes outside Lena's office. Rage, yes, but also desperation. A desperate man was dangerous. Milo set a mug of coffee in front of Jasper, his hand lingering on Jasper's shoulder. "You're quiet," he said softly. "What's going on in there?" Jasper managed a small smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I keep thinking about Grandpa. He knew they'd come for me, but he didn't tell me everything. Why didn't he trust me with the whole truth?" Milo sat across from him, his gaze steady. Maybe he thought the truth would put you in more danger. He gave you what you needed, the will, the ledger, the letter. He knew you'd figure it out. Jasper nodded, but the ache in his chest didn't ease. Elias had been his anchor, the one person who'd seen him for who he was, not what Coldwater wanted him to be. Losing him had been hard enough. Learning he'd been murdered was a wound that wouldn't heal. But the ledger, the letter, they were Elias's way of fighting back, even from the grave. Jasper wouldn't let that go to waste. Claire hung up her phone, her face grim. Lena just heard from the police. They found evidence linking Daniel Hargrove to the drug setup. The pills they planted in your apartment, they traced them to a supplier Victor's been working with for years. It's enough to clear your name, Jasper. Relief washed over him, but it was tempered by caution. What about Daniel? He's still out there. Claire hesitated. They're closing in, but he's slippery. Lena's sources say he's holed up somewhere in Coldwater, probably with help from what's left of their network. Jasper's jaw tightened. Coldwater. The town that had rejected him, judged him, tried to erase him. He'd sworn he'd never go back, but the thought of Daniel hiding there, plotting his next move, lit a fire in Jasper's chest. We need to find him, he said, before he finds us. Milo's eyes widened. Jasper, no. Let the police handle it. You've done enough. But Jasper shook his head. This isn't just about me. It's about Grandpa, about everyone the Hargroves hurt. I can't sit here and wait. Claire nodded, understanding in her eyes. I'll go with you. I know Coldwater, and I know people who can help. But we need a plan. They spent the afternoon strategizing, mapping out Coldwater's backroads and abandoned buildings where Daniel might hide. Lena agreed to keep the pressure on, publishing follow-up stories to keep the Hargroves' crimes in the spotlight. By evening, Jasper, Milo, and Claire were in a borrowed car, heading back to the town that had tried to break them. Coldwater was eerily quiet when they arrived, the streets empty under a bruised sky. They started at the old warehouse district, a maze of crumbling buildings where Daniel could easily disappear. Claire's contacts had pointed them to a storage facility rumored to be a front for the Hargroves' shadier deals. As they approached, Jasper's heart pounded, the ledger tucked safely in the car's glove box. Inside, the facility was a labyrinth of locked units and flickering lights. They moved silently, checking each corner, until a faint sound, a scrape of metal, stopped them cold. Jasper signaled for Milo and Claire to stay back, his instincts screaming. He crept forward, peering around a stack of crates, and there he was, Daniel Hargrove, hunched over a duffel bag, stuffing cash and documents inside. Jasper stepped out, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at him. It's over, Daniel. The police know everything. You can't run. Daniel spun around, his gun drawn in an instant. You don't get it, do you? He snarled. This isn't just about me. You take us down, you take down half this town. Then let it fall, Jasper said, his voice rising. You framed me because I'm gay. You killed my grandfather because he was onto you. You don't get to walk away from that. For a moment, Daniel's face softened, a flicker of something human breaking through. But it was gone as quickly as it came. He raised the gun, and Jasper braced himself, time slowing to a crawl. Then Milo tackled him from the side, the gun skidding across the floor. Claire grabbed it, her hands shaking but firm. Stay down, she ordered, as Milo pinned Daniel to the ground. Jasper's breath came in gasps, relief and adrenaline crashing together. They'd done it. Daniel was caught, the ledger was safe, and Elias's truth was finally free. The courtroom in Columbus was packed, the air thick with tension as Jasper sat in the witness stand, the ledger and Elias's letter entered as evidence. Daniel Hargrove sat at the defendant's table, his face pale, his hands cuffed. Victor Hargrove was there too, in a separate trial, but today was about Daniel, the man who'd framed Jasper, who'd carried out his father's orders to silence Elias. The jury watched Jasper closely, their faces a mix of curiosity and sympathy as he recounted the past year. The arrest, the drugs, the ledger, the truth about his grandfather's murder. Jasper's voice was steady, though his heart raced. He spoke of Elias, of the love that had shaped him, of the town that had tried to break him. He spoke of Milo, who sat in the front row, his eyes never leaving Jasper's, a silent anchor in the storm. And he spoke of the ledger, the damning proof that had unraveled the Hargroves' empire, exposing a network of corruption that reached from Coldwater to the state capitol. The prosecution was relentless, presenting the coroner's report, Claire's testimony, and Lena's articles. Daniel's defense tried to spin a story of coincidence, but the evidence was overwhelming. When the jury returned with a guilty verdict, conspiracy, fraud, and second-degree murder, Jasper felt a weight lift, though it didn't erase the pain. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, their cameras flashing as Jasper, Milo, and Claire emerged. Lena was there, her notebook in hand, a quiet smile on her face. "You did it," she said. "You brought them down." Jasper shook his head. "Elias did it. I just followed his lead." The days that followed were a blur. Kane Agricorp was dismantled, its assets frozen pending a federal investigation. Jasper, as the majority shareholder, worked with Claire to redirect the company's remaining funds to community programs in Coldwater, scholarships, youth centers, anything to rebuild what the Hargroves had torn apart. It wasn't about revenge. It was about healing. He and Milo moved to Columbus, renting a small apartment near the river. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. They spent evenings on the balcony, watching the city lights, talking about the future. Jasper started sketching again, his furniture designs taking shape on paper, each line a step toward a life he'd almost lost. Milo enrolled in community college, studying social work, determined to help kids like them who'd felt the weight of a town's judgment. One night, as they sat together, Jasper pulled out Elias's letter, reading it again. "You're my legacy, not the company." He understood now. Elias hadn't just left him a fortune or a fight. He'd left him the courage to be himself, to love without fear, to stand up when the world tried to knock him down. "I miss him," Jasper said, his voice soft. Milo took his hand, their fingers intertwining. "He's still here, in you." Jasper nodded, his eyes stinging. He thought of Coldwater, of the diner where he'd kissed Milo under the neon sign, of the farmhouse where Elias had taught him to be brave. The town had tried to erase him, but he'd survived. Not just survived, thrived. As the sun set over Columbus, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, Jasper felt a peace he hadn't known in years. The Hargroves were gone, their lies exposed, their power broken. But more than that, Jasper was free to love, to live, to build a future on his own terms. He leaned against Milo, their shoulders touching, and for the first time he believed in tomorrow. The story of Jasper Kane wasn't just about a boy who fought back. It was about a legacy of love, a grandfather's faith, and a truth that refused to stay buried. It was about a world that could change one heart at a time. And as Jasper looked out at the city, he knew he was part of that change, carrying Elias's strength, Milo's love, and his own unbreakable spirit into whatever came next.